about tuning in to self-care. My name is Deborah Henson-Conant. I'm a composer and a performer, and I'm here with Kathleen Wiley, who is a Jungian psychoanalyst. We both play the harp, and that's part of our expression in the world, and so we call this Jung at Harp. Today, we're going to talk about tuning in to self-care, and I just want to explain what this is. It's a conversation, and it started because Kathleen and I were having a conversation in her car years ago, and I was observing the sparks that were flying between us, coming from her experience of life and my experience of life, and how those sparks were creating a fire that lit a whole different area of understanding for me. And the art of conversation, whoops, sorry, my glasses just fell onto the harp. That the experience of conversation is so different from being taught to or being talked to. It's about coming in with a question rather than coming in with an agenda. And it's opening up to the discovery together. And that's what I love. And that's why I also love that we found this format where you can also be part of the conversation. So I just wanted to share that because it may be different than other things that the other people you hear talking. We didn't come here necessarily even knowing about what the answers, but we come knowing the question. So I am particularly interested in this because I've discovered that self-care is a powerful agent for grounding myself, creating stability, and also moving into greater areas of creativity in my life. And that's what I'm trying to do. But I came from a background of benign neglect. And so I just tend to get kind of casual and sloppy with certain things, that it would help me to tune in to the self-care there. So I would love to hear what you have to say about this, Kathleen.
Wow. Well, I think this is such an important topic because we don't have classes in school on self-care. We don't, we get little snippets like in our PE class and physical education. We may get some health information. But one of the things I want to say about self-care is I think it has to start with a valuing of ourself, a recognition that our body, mind, and ourself, because our ego, our sense of self starts with our body, is our first home. It's our primary home. It's the home that goes everywhere with us. It is the source of our energy and the life force that flows through us in a contained way. And it really is the prima materia. It's all of the resources we have to create our life. It's all in our body mind. So if we don't take care of and value our body mind, then our sense of self, our ego ideal, is going to suffer. And so the first thing I want to say about it is we have to begin to value ourselves and realize that our body isn't something that gets in the way because it has needs or because it has limits or because it has its own rhythms different from other people or because our body doesn't allow us to go to stadium rock concerts. We need more quiet harpsichord concerts or whatever, even though our friends may love the stadium rock. We have to be willing to begin to value our own body-mind experience and honor it.
Okay, can you talk about how, and we were talking about the structures for this, the structures. So how do you value? And what does that mean to value something? I mean, it sounds like you're saying that to value our body mind, first there's just a sense of like, oh wow, that's a really valuable thing. Like, for example, when I turn on the water spigot, I'm like, oh my God, water is coming out of this. This is like a big deal. And then that has a certain, that will impact how I feel about my plumber and all of that. So it sounds like the first step is to become aware of the value. And then it sounds like there's something about leveraging that, I mean, like, okay, so I don't invest in the stock market, but I have friends who do.
Mhm.
And they take the value that they have and they put it in the stock market and it increases.
Mhm.
Or it goes back, and whatever it does something magical. So I'm thinking that with self-care, first we become aware of it, and then we start to invest in it. And as we invest in it, what does that open up? So my first question is, how do we value it in terms of
Mhm.
awareness? How do we invest in it? And then what's going to happen when we do that?
Oh, those are great questions. So I think the first way we value it is we see it, acknowledge it, and offer gratitude. And then the second thing we do is we listen to what it has to tell us about the state it's in and what it needs. And then we commit, which means that we become willing and we pledge ourselves to act on behalf of our own body mind. I looked up the etymology of commit, which has a very interesting, because the word means many different things, like committing a crime or committing to a mental institution or committing to the care of the state, or sending, committing one's energy, pledging oneself to an action, to a mission is actually what the word connects to. And so we commit ourselves to the mission of taking care of our body and our body mind, because what we value, we take care of, right? If you value your money, for instance, and what it might do for you, then you invest it. You tend it. If you value your plants, then you water it, you fertilize it. If you value your home, you keep it clean, you throw trash out. When we value something, we commit, we pledge ourselves to take action on its behalf. That's life-giving.
Now, what if we've been in a state of benign neglect or non-benign neglect, and it feels like it's just overwhelming? I mean, and it'd be interesting to talk about this just in terms of like the HARP, because HARP is a part of both of our lives. But I know that, for example, my life can just feel overwhelming, and I can make a big checklist of all the things that I need to do for self-care, and it feels kind of like overwhelming. And yet there are things that I know when I do them, they feel and they look good. And I made a decision that cleaning the cat box was a number one indicator of my spiritual health. I just made that decision. And so now when I clean the cat box and I have this system and I have this, shift and sift system, and it takes me 90 seconds, so I have this whole, it's become this valued routine. But I don't have that with other things. So when we're overwhelmed, I know you can make a list, we all know there's all this advice that we can get. What's one thing that we can do within ourselves to increase the awareness so that those lists become accessible to us rather than seeming like just more stuff?
I think the best thing to do, and we can do this anywhere, is to pause and focus on your breath and follow your breath into your body and ask yourself, what do I most need at this moment?
As you're saying that, I'm thinking about, so some of the things, let's see, where am I? I'm over here. I'm thinking about when I teach improv and I'm looking at struggles that people have.
Mm-hmm.
Almost always what is happening is someone is trying to accomplish something faster than they can, or more elaborately than they can. And so those two things, fast and elaborate, and yet we think of that as defining doing it well. And so one of the things that I have been teaching is very simple improv prompts, as simple as, or actually I meant this. It's really, it kind of, it sings into the overtone series. It's just this beautiful, it's G, D, A, and then creating a pattern, but not having to think about music, and really slowing it down and allowing something that we often forget, and I don't know how to see this in life, but I know how to see it in the harp. When I do that, I'm done doing things, but the harp has just begun to sing. And if I allow that resonance, then I can sing back to it. But there has to be that pause. If I'm all worried about what am I doing and am I doing it fast enough, I'm not really getting that space, and I'm never listening to what I'm getting back. And I mean, the minute if I listen, I just want to start singing. I want to be part of that resonance. Now, I'm attuned to that with an instrument, but I am not attuned to it in my own life in other ways. And so it's lost to me.
Yeah, so your learning curve is being in, like you have Hip Harp Academy to help harpists with this, with the harp and music. Your learning curve, and I think all of ours to some extent, is putting ourselves in school, whatever that may look like, whether it's a self-help group or a class or analysis or therapy or, you know, a nutritional guidance, for instance. I mean, what I want to say about this, starting with the most basics, and our most basic and fundamental of needs are physical needs: food, shelter, warmth. Okay, food, shelter, warmth. So we have to tend, you know, am I feeding my body? Am I giving my body good fuel? You know, we think about the pine wood in the fireplace is going to give a quick hot fire that's going to pop a lot, but it's going to die out quickly. Hardwood is going to build a fire that's much more solid and lasts longer. So we have to begin to think about how we eat, as that's the fuel for our body. Are we giving ourselves something that's going to give us a quick burst of energy, caffeine or sugar, but quickly die? Are we giving ourselves solid hardwood, so to speak, you know, good vegetables, good quality protein that's going to fuel our body? The same thing with rest. You know, I mean, sounds so simple, but we all forget these things. You know, how many of us think, oh, I'm too busy, I'm going to eat lunch at my desk, or I'll eat lunch in the car, or I'll skip breakfast, and then we end up feeling that energetic drop because we've not tended to the fuel that we need. So some of this is cultivating a mindset. Like, how do you do it? You have to begin to cultivate a mindset that, okay, food is fuel, sleep and good rest is re-energizing, recreation is time to be recreated. And what are the things I know about myself, and you know about yourself, and our listeners know about themselves, that are things that re-energize? For me, being re-energized, being in nature, you know, being in the woods, having lots of trees, periods of quiet, you know, those things energize me. I'm not a person who could go to stadium rock concerts. Man, that would zap me for days, you know. Honoring our own rhythms is also something else that's a part of self-care. You know, what's our own biological clock? Some people say that's, we can look to the time of day we were born and get an idea. I was born at 6:09 a.m. So I'm a morning person, and I really feel best the days I'm up by 5 or 5:30. Well, I'm married to a folk musician who was born at 11:10 p.m. And, you know, about 6 o'clock, he starts to rev up at night. And so, you know, it's been very interesting, our coming together and finding a way to be together in relationship, and each kind of move a little bit toward the other, but recognizing there's only so far we can move without really compromising our own health, because our energy system, self-care, is tied to our health. And right now we're just even talking about the physical self-care, but then we have to get to the emotional self-care, the mental self-care, and the spiritual. I mean, it's all on a continuum. But often people in our culture, we neglect the body. We push against the body. We don't like the fact that our body may need rest, or that we may need to take the 30 minutes to sit down and enjoy a meal.
So for everybody who's joining us, we're talking about tuning in to self-care. And so finding your own awareness and what you're going to do. And what I'm hearing from Kathleen is I heard the words guidance, structure, awareness, and then something I can't read here. And listening to your own listening to yourself and acknowledging. And we went back to valuing, and I asked an early question, which is what what are the aspects of valuing? If I came from another planet and someone said value your self-care or value your body, I would be like, how do I do that? What are the And so what I'm hearing is we can't always do that alone, especially if we did not get the guidance as children. Like my mother, her thing wasn't about her thing was about independence. Make sure this everything's falling off this morning. Her thing was all about make sure that this kid can be self-expressed and can be independent. And that was a great choice for being an artist, but not necessarily a great choice for knowing how to integrate with other people or collaborate with others, which I'm learning a lot about now that I have a team to put my musical together. I'm learning more about that. And self-care, actually taking care of, like you said, this body, this machine pet house, this thing that we are with. So let's break it down for a minute. Like what, and I'm going to slow down when I speak. We talked about tuning in. Now, again, I notice when I tune in to that one little phrase, which for musicians is just G, D, and A, but it's down very low, so it's resonating the entire instrument and me. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm slowing down and I'm connecting to some kind of other. I'm not alone. I don't have external strings on my body that can resonate like that, but I do. My fingers can have a voice, and they can engage in this instrument having a voice. And so just doing this thing and then singing back, that is part of experiencing listening, awareness, connecting. Now, I don't know what would come out of that, but I'm wondering as I'm saying this, if for me, tuning into my own self-care has to do with coming and seeing the value of something I can already do and what it does for me. And to let myself, instead of like, I'll be like, checklist. Okay, checklist for self-care. Okay, clean the cat box. I have self-care. I'm not sure that's exactly the way to do it.
No, what you're talking about, and I'm thinking about in my embodiment practices circle that is online. If you're interested, you can check it out at innerdivinespirit.com. You'll find the link. But in my embodiment practices circle, the first embodiment practice we work with is body awareness. Because what often happens is we get the list going and the intellect takes it over. Okay, if I just do this checklist, then it's a self-care. Well, so then maybe we push ourselves to go out and run on a day when our body and what we really need is not to run, but we need to stay in the house and do some gentle stretches, or we need to take a brisk walk in the park. That we get this idea that self-care or playing an instrument is all about the notes on the page, i.e. the list. Well,
Right.
and you say this all the time, music is not about the notes on the page. Music is about that connection between you as the harpist and the instrument or whatever, or the harp.
That's
And
right.
that's
And the structure's not there to define specifics, but the
right.
structure is there to support the impulse. So if I have on my calendar run at a certain time, I may go out and run, or I may go out and walk if it's really cold or if it's snowing or something like that. I can replace it with other things, but it's created an awareness
Right.
for me that running is important to me. And that
Mm-hmm.
why do I run? I run because I love to be outside. I love the what the air feels like coming into my body. I, I love what happens to my mind. I love that my mind clears out and new ideas come in, or jumbled ideas tend to take shape. And
Mm-hmm.
then I will often just put on my phone and read them back to myself. So I will often get more structure during my run. So one of the things that I'm thinking right now in tuning into our self-care is to understand why we're doing each thing that we're doing. And
Mm-hmm.
that, I think, comes to that answer that you said in the beginning, valuing it. Understanding the why is valuing it. So why do I run? Then I can make other choices. Why do I brush my teeth? Then maybe I can make other choices, or whatever. If I don't have my toothbrush or something like that, if I
Mm-hmm.
understand all those things, why do I clean the cat box? I clean the cat box because I love my cats, but I also love, I got to admit it, I love the shift and sift. I love that someone came up with a system, a little machine I can engage in that makes me really happy that somebody came up with that idea. I love that. So that just saying that out loud makes me realize, it helps me understand how I can get more out of my self-care and what I'm actually trying to care for.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about the structure. If you think about infants, what do infants need? They need to be fed, they need to be changed, they need to be held, and they need sleep, right? What do toddlers need? So if we're having trouble wondering where do we even start with self-care, just think about if I were a baby, what would I need? And that kind of universally brings it up. And then we need to take care of the baby in us because, as one of my analysts used to say, we all have far more baby in us as adults than we like to admit. you know Think about how many people are, if this may be some of you who are listening, we get irritated if we don't eat. Kind of sounds like the 2-year-old too, doesn't it? If we miss our nap time, if we miss relaxation time. So if we can think about, okay, how would we take care of an infant toddler? What are the basic needs? That's how we can start tuning into self-care. We also then realize it is the physical need, but it's also the emotional need for love and comfort. Because that's the other thing infants need. Decades ago, they did studies, they were called the Harlow studies, where they worked with infants, set up a study with infants in ICU, and they had some infants that got all of their basic physical needs met, but they were never held by a human being. They were put into like a covered monkey, wire monkey that would hold them. And what they discovered, and
Wait,
there are other
you're talking about human babies or monkey babies?
human babies in ICU. They did studies decades ago to determine whether or not just the basic physical needs were met. And what they found in the infants who were not literally held by a human being is they experienced a failure to thrive.
Mm-hmm.
Touch is a nutritive element, affection. So, how we touch ourselves, how we hug ourselves, how we interact with our pets, how we have relationships where someone may pat us on the back or hold our hand, those are also
Mm-hmm.
basic needs that are a part of our self care. Being in those kinds of relationships and also giving ourselves that. I mean, how many times again, and we talked about the demon pot last week or week before last, we all have this energy where our attitude towards ourselves is not at all holding and comforting, but it's like the whip.
Right. That's right. I see what you're saying. That's right. So there's levels of kindness and humanity and human kindness. Um, and this is feeling very emotional to me ever since you started talking about that there is this baby inside, this there is
Mm-hmm.
that never goes away. And part of me was like, but that's not true. I'm a grown up now. I shouldn't need that anymore. And um, that voice even is so is so just like off-putting and not accepting and not engaging and not embracing. You talked about embracing, the physical embrace. Many of us don't have that option right now, even to hold hands with someone. And I'm thinking that even the way we speak or the way we touch our instruments or our pets, like you said, we can engage, we can tune in to the experience of embrace. So as we say, tune in to self-care, and you're talking about what are the basic human needs. I'm
Right.
really looking at that. How can we tune into that? And I see, let me pull this comment up.
Yeah.
So Reham is saying, wonderful topic. As much as I tried to follow a specific daily routine, it never worked. I
Yeah.
finally accepted that being flexible and in the moment is better for my well-being, less stress and more alive. So that sounds like being tuned in, being aware of less stress and more alive. What will it take for each one of us? And that may be different for each person.
Yeah, and oh, there are two or three things that keep going through my mind I want to say. One is that having a commitment to self-care versus a commitment to the goal of running 5 times a week. Those are different commitments. If I'm committed to self-care, then part of self-care may be running on average 5 times a week, or for me, swimming 2 or 3 times a week. But the larger that sometimes what happens is we sacrifice the flexibility and the tuning in for the structure that becomes rigid. And like you said, if I have marked on my calendar, like for me, for instance, I swim at the Y, and so I have to go online and schedule it, reserve a time, particularly started that since the pandemic. And I have to, anyway, you can only do that 22 hours before the time is available. So I can't really say, okay, I'm going to go swim. I can't say on Sunday, these are the days I'm going to swim, because there isn't a guarantee I'm going to get that time. But what I can say is, okay, these are the days I have blocks of time where I could swim. And so then I can begin to shoot for those blocks of times. So it's having the fluid structure, which is what you teach in improv. There's the root, there is that tonic drone, we might say. For me this morning, as I was doing a little improv, it was D. I was doing D Dorian. And then the improv is how we work with that in that moment, tuning into ourselves in that moment. So the same thing is so true for us with daily self-care around, again, our eating, our movement, our sleep, our interactions with other people, our downtime. Nothing in nature moves quickly all the time. Nature, animals only move quickly when they're in danger. That's
Huh.
when you see them running at fast speed,
What
or
about
when they're
dogs when
going
they're
for a need. Hmm?
What about dogs when they're happy? Or horses
Well,
when they're
that's
happy?
very true. My little dog loves to run free. And dogs are domesticated though also. They've crossed over from being wild to domesticated. So we also have to slow down, which is part of what you were demonstrating earlier with the improv. It's very different to slow down and listen to your instrument and the resonance inside of you than it is to just say, okay, I'm going to play it this way and go for it. And so haste, deception, and despair are the three things that the alchemist say will sabotage the experiment. And in our case, the experiment is effective self-care. So if we move hastily, we deceive ourselves, we're dishonest with who we are and what we need and what we're feeling in the moment, and we fall into despair, oh, I can never do this, I'm too overwhelmed. Those things will sabotage the experiment. And I found myself even this morning with my harp. I've made a commitment to my harp, and my harp buddy knows this, so she's reminding me when we meet. I made a commitment that 3 times a day I'm going to put my hands on my harp. It may be for 1 minute, it may be for 20 minutes, but 3 times a day. And I'm really finding I love having a little harp time early morning. So this morning I'm all ready and I'm thinking, okay, it's like 20 till and I'm thinking, okay, I got to get up to my office and get set up. And then I just breathe and I thought, you can take 10 minutes to sit here at your harp. And I sat down at my harp and put my hands on the harp and was able to tune in the moment with an intention I've set for myself, which is to improvise around my purpose, my spiritual purpose for playing the harp. And just let myself feel the resonance of that come back to me. And I could have stayed in the mindset of rush, rush, rush. Oh, I got to get up. I got this to do. I got that to do. I can return this phone call. But I slowed down to really tune in to the whole me. And
Well,
that 10 minutes changed my attitude.
yeah, and I really want to jump on that word purpose. You said
Mm-hmm.
you said the word purpose, and I think this is where improvisation comes in. And so just for those who are listening, I teach improvisation to harp players, improvisation, performance, and arrangement at Hip Harp Academy. And Kathleen teaches the embodiment of the self. I mean, you can talk about
Yeah.
that, which I'm assuming is a kind of improvisation. And I was in a marketing seminar and somebody said, so whenever you list out the things, the things that are in your work, always make sure that you say so that you can. And he's talking about marketing to other people. And I thought, what if I'm marketing to myself? This allows me to tune in. So, what is the purpose? I drink tea so that I can hold the cup that my aunt gave me that I love, so that I can feel the warmth, so that I didn't realize this, so that I can have a
Mm-hmm.
spoon that my mother gave me, so that I can remember Sylvia, my sort of foster mother, because I drank tea with her. I drink tea. The purpose is so much deeper than just drinking tea. And
Beautiful.
and when I know that purpose, I think that is the tuning in. I run, like I explained the reasons why. When I know that, the whole experience becomes richer, and it gives me an option. If I can't find my cup, if I can't, if I ran out of a certain kind of tea, I can still say, well, wait, what's my purpose? Is to connect with that. I mean, a different cup that I have helps me connect with a trip that I took to France that I really loved. So
Mm.
I hadn't really put into words that the cups and the utensils that I use, the tools that I use, have a connection to human beings. When I touch this harp, I'm remembering Joël Garnier, the man who first listened to
Mm.
my dreams of having a harp that I could wear, and also his protege Jacques, who built this instrument. So each thing, each object has a purpose.
Yes.
And then if I were thinking about this musically, once I know that purpose, it gives me more flexibility in
Yes.
how I actually engage with that. And then structure is, I need to remember that the structure isn't there to impose itself on me, but the structure, even if it's a checklist, is to give me support. The
Yeah.
more support I have from the structure, the more creative I can step out. I have that grounding to step out, whether music or with my life. And what you're answering for me is the question I'm always asking myself, which is, how can I utilize the things I know about engaging with music to help me open up the parts of my life where I feel lost and like incapable?
Yeah, and so one of the alchemical principles is that as within, so without. That the laws, the operating principles of how things are created, are the same on every plane and in every dimension. So what you know about music is all you need to know about life. It's just a matter of translating it into a different arena.
Right, which is that, and that's what I love to do with the students in the academy, is
Yeah.
bring who you are here, let the harp be a platform for that, so that that gets expressed in the world. And I'm realizing that what you're saying is I could be expressing myself as a musician and an artist in everything I do, and not by making it more, creative or weird, but just by really, again, tuning in to taking care of myself, every part of myself. And you gave us some beautiful examples about food and love and home and self-expression. And Word Artist is saying, you you are our support in
Mm.
HARP. And that, thank you. And that brings me back to this idea of having guidance, as well as, what did I write it down when you were talking? Guidance and structure. And
Yeah, and I want to just go back. I don't want to lose what you said. You learned in your marketing seminar that we can use here with ourselves is that, I'm getting up 30 minutes early to have the meditation time so that I can move through my day centered and calm regardless of the outer world events. That connection to what is it giving us? I mean, and it's not a giving of an external, but a giving of something internal. And part of the path of embodiment is stoking our own energy system. I mean, in the esoteric mystery traditions, the first path of initiation has to do with learning how to stoke your own fire. And by fire, they mean your own life force. So, how
right.
do we tend our body mind so we have the energy to do the creative things we want to do, to move in the world, to be with the people we want to be with and offer our gifts? Because if we don't have the energy to do that, if our fire isn't strong and our container, our structure of our body, mind, and our ego self isn't strong, we burn out.
Yeah, and I want to come back to this comment. Um, you are our support in our HARP and life pursuit. To what I feel like that points out is that when we share, even
Uh,
if we share our whatever we share, that becomes something for others to observe, and
mhm.
then to, I mean, it doesn't we don't have to show this is the way to do it. Like, it doesn't seem to matter. It seems that when we share who we are, or like when someone's trying to explain how to do something to me, I'm like, can you just give me an example? Can you just show
Yeah.
me someone who did it? It doesn't have to be someone who did it well. I just need to see it so that it comes into a different part of me. And so I'm hearing that as we are willing to share, no matter who we are or what we're doing, that then allows others to see what tunes in for them, what resonates for them.
Yeah, we learn from each other. And I love what you said at the beginning, which is what we, I think, both love about Jung at Harp, is that we come together with questions we both want to explore, that to find meaning for ourselves, and to invite you all to find meaning for yourself, and for us to all get a greater understanding of that vis-a-vis our sharing. And that is part of what human relationships give us and why we need each other. I mean, Jung said wholeness is a combination of I and you. We cannot become whole until we really encounter ourselves in the other. And yeah.
I'm thinking now, as you say that, about this musical that I'm producing in New York, this
Mhm.
musical, and it's about these two characters who are not whole until they can connect. And I'm just realizing that again, even the stories that we tell or that we want to hear over and over again, the fairy tales that we want to hear over, even these can help us to connect, to tune in to our self-care. So I want to just kind of recap that some of the things that were important to me here were guidance, that I'm going to use for myself,
Mhm.
guidance along with structure. Very important to me. And because guidance also connects me. Being able to see other
Mhm.
people do things, I want to give myself more of that. I see people running on the bike path, and my body wants to watch how they run, to just try it on. And I want to let myself do more of that. Knowing what is my purpose, just asking the question, so that I want to drink tea, so that helps me tune in to my self care. And then really thinking about that list as a gentle support, a string, a support, not a demand.
Yes. Yes. I think that is so beautiful because once our structures become a demand, something in us rebels. And so, one of the things that we have to learn about how our own psyche operates in our own energy system is that compassion and suggestion working together, honoring both sides, because the more we try to coerce and force ourselves, the more something in us will rise up in resistance to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The other thing I loved is, and I just love you to say it again, there were three things. You said something, and despair and that get in the way. And I'm going to
Oh,
pull this.
yeah. Haste, deception, and despair.
Okay,
So, yeah, haste. So, one of the things I'm really going to hold on to from today is I'm going to slow down. When I find myself feeling overwhelmed and hurrying, I'm going to breathe deep and just slow down and tune in.
great. And Lori has shared something here. My
Yeah.
daily walk along the lake started out as my exercise goal. Surprisingly, the visual gifts of the lake energized me. I never miss a day. My soul is fed daily. Just a simple walk. I'm so grateful for that. That's so beautiful. And I'm hearing that as Lori is doing that, it's tuning her into her own self-care. And she's caring about herself. And I also see that it is resonating with a care for what she sees. And then she's engaged not just alone, but with others as well. That's really, really beautiful.
Yeah, and I can't, research shows the difference that being in nature makes for how we feel and for our ability to stay healthy on every plane. So it's so important that we give ourselves time in nature and terrific for a walk around the lake. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is beautiful, a beautiful recap and
Yeah.
connection of all this. Fluid structure with guidance. Great concept, a middle way.
Yes. Yeah.
And this
Yeah.
is why we love having this conversation with you. These are beautiful. Thank you so much, Kathleen. As
You-
always, I just really love this, and I love getting to share it more and more with more people. And thank you, everyone, for all the comments that you send to us. Really appreciate it. I just want to say again, I'll say how you can connect with me. If you're a harpist, Hip Harp Academy, or you can just go to hipharp.com and you can connect with me and learn improv and arrangement and performance. And if you are in New York City in April 2022, you can come to my musical, The Golden Cage, which is going to be appearing April 19th through the 23rd. And you can find out about that on my website too. And Kathleen, how can people connect to you?
Yeah, you can go to innerdivinespirit.com and there you'll find contact information as well as links to information about the online circles, sacred circles I do. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you. And thank you so much. Oh, there's one more comment. Let's just see.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, beautiful.
Oh,
I'll just put this up. Thank you. Beautiful. Thank you for tuning us all in weekly. Beautiful. Okay. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to pull this right back up and we'll see you again next week. Thank you so much,
okay.
Kathleen.
Bye-bye.
Bye.